A few years ago, I went into an actual store to go buy some DVDs. These DVDs, the box set for Jodie Whittaker's series of Doctor Who, all the episodes. And I went in, like I said, to an actual store and spent my hard-earned gold because I planned to watch it from start to finish in anticipation of the then upcoming 60th anniversary specials. I had been trying my best to keep up with the show at the time, but Jodie Whittaker's era was airing while I was still active duty in the Marine Corps, and I'd missed some stuff along the way. But I'd seen Flux, and I knew how the Doctor story ended, but I hadn't watched the whole series in order. Unfortunately, buying the box set didn't allow me to watch the entire series, all of the episodes in order, because it was missing disc number 7. Yeah. Got a blank space, baby. A quick Google search told me that this disc contained 3 episodes, one of which was The Timeless Child. Now, maybe this was a factory error or a return item which was incorrectly reshelved, but in my heart of hearts, I believed something else entirely. Some well-meaning but misguided fan was trying to decanonize the Timeless Child episode one DVD box set at a time. Now, maybe that sounds crazy. Maybe it's insane to assume that anyone would risk theft charges in order to keep myself and others from knowing about a TV episode. But if you've seen any of the discourse online around the subject of the Timeless Child, you would know it's not outside the realm of possibilities that such a guerrilla campaign might exist. But luckily for me, the internet also exists, and the missing episodes were available to stream online, so I did eventually watch all of the episodes, including the missing episodes in question, The Timeless Child, or Timeless Children, I think is the name of the episode. Now, to be clear, I did not enjoy this episode. I didn't like it. I thought the pacing was off. I thought the plot was meandering. I thought there was a lot of loose ends and characters with nothing to do. Sacha Dhawan's performance was all over the place, which fair, he's the master, but in this episode it doesn't work, and I like Sacha Dhawan's master, but this performance really wasn't working for me at the time that I watched it. However, the actual controversial parts of the episode didn't really bug me, the parts that everyone else gets upset about. I was more annoyed by the story time, exposition heavy way in which the master delivers the big revelations to us as an audience. The quality of the episode aside, since hammy performances and convoluted plots are part of Doctor Who's DNA, the real question is, does this change to the Doctor's lore work? Does it deserve all the hate it gets online? Or is it possible that the Timeless Child is actually the most important and most misunderstood story in Doctor Who's long history? Welcome to the All Trades Jack channel. I am the titular Titillating Jack, and I'm back with another Who-SA from the USA. In this series, I, a big-headed and uninformed American, speak ad nauseum about the British cultural institution that is Doctor Who, all while trying not to become an enemy of the crown. Today's Who-SA is the Timeless Child a plot hole or a stroke of genius? Now, Chris Chibnall would likely argue that it is not a plot hole. He wouldn't think that he created any plot holes. He would say that he was plugging one of the oldest plot holes in the history of the show, that being the identity of the Morbius Doctors. For those who are unversed in classic Who, the Brain of Morbius arc included a regeneration highlight reel, the likes of which we've seen in episodes since, like The 11th Hour and Rogue. However, this particular highlight reel was notable for showcasing multiple faces which the Doctor had never had in the show, faces that never showed up with a main actor playing them. Now, when adding these Doctors to the rest of the modern Doctors, it creates an issue, which is that the total number of incarnations is increased by a minimum of these 8 faces, and the Doctor is only allowed 13 faces, 12 regenerations. By creating the Timeless Child, Chibnall solves this problem by making the Doctor's ability to regenerate infinite. Or so that's what he meant to do. However, there are many reasons this doesn't really work. Let's start by asking the question, when do the Morbius Doctors exist? When were they meant to have existed? They're looking into the Doctor's past in the mind of Morbius, so this is clearly something pre-Tom Baker, And we saw all the adventures of the Doctor between Hartnell and Baker. Thus, the existence of the Morbius Doctors implies that Hartnell was not the first Doctor. Another possibility is that there are in-between Doctors, perhaps between Troughton and Pertwee. This kind of does make sense. There was a forced regeneration here. The second Doctor was forced to regenerate and banished to Earth. So if there was ever a time that the Time Lords were going to meddle with the Doctor's timeline and add in other people, this could be it. And there's a whole fan theory that explores this idea. I think it's called Series 2B. There's a great video, I'll link down below. DW Fan 91 has a really good take on this whole subject, and I'm going to send you that way if you want to know more about the possibility of this as a place where the pre-Hartnell Doctors might have actually, maybe they're not pre-Hartnell, maybe they are this Series 2B Doctors. But regardless of whether these Doctors were pre or post-Hartnell, it doesn't really matter because they're pre-Tom Baker. And this brings up a larger issue. If there are 8 Morbius Doctors and 4 known televised incarnations at that time, at the time of the episode's release, it would mean that the Doctor's latest incarnation is the 12th incarnation, that the 4th Doctor is actually the 12th Doctor, and that Peter Davidson would be the last Doctor. He would be the 13th face. So if Chibnall set out to fix the Morbius Doctor hole, he was about 7 Doctors too late to do so. I mean, sure, this explanation explains why he was able to go past it, but it doesn't explain why the 12th Doctor later needs a way to get over that number, because he shouldn't be at the point where he's out of regenerations yet. As far as I counted, 8 Morbius Doctors, 4 Doctors, Peter Davidson, that's 13, which means Colin Baker would be number 1 of a new regeneration cycle. Sylvester McCoy would be 2, Paul McGann 3, Hurt 4. Since Schalke is now canon, I suppose, then I guess Richard E. Grant would now be number 5. Eccleston would be number 6. David Tennant would be 7 and 8. Smith would be 9. Capaldi would be 10. And then Jodie would be 11, Master Jodie would be 12, and Remaster Jodie would be 13. Then they would hit a 3rd regeneration cycle with the return of Tennant. All of that is without including Ruth or the Irish Cop Doctor or any of the Infinite Children. So all of this is meant to clean up the mess that the Mind of Morbius made, but it seems messier now than before. And that's especially true for Doctor Who's younger fans and international fans without access to older episodes, since the modern era doesn't ever recognize the Morbius Doctors. And I don't just mean that they never flash back to it. I don't just mean in all of the times they've shown every face of the Doctor, they haven't shown the Morbius Doctors. I mean, they explicitly do not count them. They go out of their way to explicitly list the numberings of each Doctor in the episode, the time of the Doctor, and the Morbius Doctors are not accounted for.
If you've been paying attention, I'm an old man now.
But you don't die. You change. You pop right back up with a new face.
No, not forever. I can change 12 times, 13 versions of me, 13 silly Doctors.
Okay, so you're number 11, so...
Ha, are we forgetting Captain Grumpy? Huh? I didn't call myself the Doctor during the Time War, but it was still a regeneration.
Okay, so you're number 12.
Well, number 10 once regenerated and kept the same face. I had vanity issues at the time. 12 regenerations, Clara. I can't ever do it again. This is where I end up. This face. This version of me.
It was fully established in that episode that the Doctor is on his 13th life. The Doctor believed this to be their last life and that this death would be their final end. Now, maybe this is the Doctor lying. They are known to do that. But I don't think so, because Clara is there with him and she necessarily has seen every version of him. She entered the Doctor's time stream, becoming entangled in every moment of his existence. We see in the previous episode, Name of the Doctor, that she is surprised to see the War Doctor because she'd seen every other version. This means that in this place, inside the Doctor's time stream, all of this life which is visible to her, even even the fragments locked away in the Time War, those are the complete Doctor. All 12 faces plus the War Doctor. She's seeing everything, and she did not see any Morbius Doctors, nor did the Doctor name them when he counted up all of his faces in Time of the Doctor. So we can trust every character involved in this regeneration episode when they say the Doctor has had 13 incarnations. For all intents and purposes, New Who did not recognize the existence of the Morbius Doctors. Or the Schalke Doctor, for that matter, at least not up to this point in the show's history. I know that's changed since, but at this point, when they were establishing these rules, nobody had acknowledged them.
Sorry? What did you say? Did you mention the rule?
So when Chibnall decides a few years later to do the Timeless Child, the timing of it is really off. There's no reason to introduce the Timeless Child at that point in time, and it undermines this story. I mean, looking back at this story now, what were the Time Lords actually giving the Doctor? What's all this regeneration energy they pumped through? He wouldn't need that, would he? They would just need to take the blocks off that prevent him from regenerating infinitely because he's the Timeless Child. So I don't know. Like, this is really why it doesn't work. Now, you could try to say that the Time Lords locked these memories away so the Doctor couldn't access them, and that's why he doesn't remember the Morbius Doctors. And I could maybe argue against that by saying that these weren't memories in the name of the Doctor. It was an opening into the Doctor's timeline, to which I guess you could really stretch and say, well, maybe the Time Lords didn't just lock away his memories, but they actually severed his part of his timeline from another part of his timeline somehow in a way we've never been shown or explained to be possible. Yeah, maybe you could try to stretch your imagination and come up with ways to make this work, but there is one glaring problem, which is that the Doctor knows their secrets. Right up to the point that the idea of the Timeless Child is told to us. The Doctor knows what their secrets are. They're always being enigmatic, but they know what their secrets are. We are given that impression from day one. What am I talking about? There is a secret which predates the Timeless Child, which the Doctor is aware of, and it informs the way that the Doctor talks about themselves and introduces themselves and the way that they bond with other people. It's all limited by this secret. What is this secret? I don't know, because we were never told. It was always left enigmatic, and because Chibnall wrote the story of the Timeless Child the way he did, it seems to try to be the answer to all the enigma and all the hanging plot points, which could work. These answers could work, except that in the Timeless Child story arc, the Doctor doesn't know about the Timeless Child. And he doesn't know any other part of... They don't know any other part of their secret. They're completely oblivious. And it takes them by total surprise when the Master brings all this to them. So any answers that the Timeless Child gives us is overwriting an answer that must have existed at some point, which is now unmade before we ever got the chance to know what it was. For example, if you want to think of plot points the Timeless Child answers while also making confusing, look no further than the name of the show.
Doctor Who. It's more than just a secret, isn't it?
The Doctor's name is the longest running mystery in the show, and it has made abundantly clear that the Doctor knows what their own name is. The Doctor is not ignorant to what their name is. They're not keeping it a secret because they don't know. It's not a secret from them. It's a secret from everyone else. Moreover, some of the Time Lords are aware of his true name. Not old Time Lords, not Time Lords from the time of chaos, like his contemporaries. Some of those Time Lords are aware of his true name and the importance of it. But none of them seem to have much writing on their own names. There's no warning or prophecy about what will happen if the Rani or the Master reveal their names. Just the Doctor. The secret of the Doctor's name is supposed to hold the power to unmake worlds and redefine reality, and the Doctor knows this and seemingly knows why. Throughout the entire series, this is a secret that they keep for a reason. Keeping their name hidden is an important part of the Doctor's very ethos. Now, the obvious question we have to ask in the wake of the Timeless Child reveal is, Does the Doctor know who Doctor Who is? Can the Doctor answer the question Doctor Who? Obviously, we still don't know the Doctor's name, but we do now know that the Doctor also doesn't know the Doctor's name. They have some name that would have been their given name before Tecteun found them at the breach, which they are now currently unaware of. Because Tecteun didn't even know it. She knew nothing about the Doctor when she picked her up. Like, there's no knowledge of what the Doctor's name is. So whatever big secret the Doctor thinks they're keeping by not telling their name, it's something they were given by Tecteun or the other Time Lords. It's something that was given to them after it wasn't their actual name. The big secret, whatever it is, it's so important to them to keep them this secret. I don't know if it's still important. Like, if it's not their real name, does it matter if people know it? The crack on Trenzalore has been dealt with, so it doesn't matter if someone says his name there. Why not just start going by their Time Lord name now? Like, does it matter? Does it matter that they keep their name secret? Is that still a thing? What did all of that mean over the last 50, 60 years? What was it all about if the Doctor never knew what their name was either? Any nod to the name being a secret, especially one they know, is undermined by this revelation. Either their name has nothing to do with the Timeless Child and therefore is a lower order of mystery and intrigue than their opaque origins, or his name is related to his origin as the Timeless Child, and it doesn't make sense that he would both know his name and not know that he's the Timeless Child. And if it's some confusing combination of both, it would only make things messier. There's no good fix for the Doctor's name when you're dealing with the Timeless Child. It's very obvious that this wasn't thought through. Another example would be the Doctor's age, a number which has varied wildly over the years. Now, in Classic Era, they seem to be in the thousands of years old.
I'm beginning to lose confidence for the first time in my life. And that covers several thousand years.
And then by New Who, they are only in their 900s. Now, maybe they've lost count, or maybe they start counting again every lifetime, or maybe they started counting again after the Time War. But either way, the uncertainty regarding the length of their life could be the justification for the Timeless Child, but it could also be evidence against it. If the Doctor was aware of the Timeless Child, then the inconsistencies with his age would make sense, since there are parts of his life that he tries not to mention, that he tries to actively erase. If he was trying to obfuscate that he is the Timeless Child, it would make sense that he would lie about his age and lie about his origins. It would make sense because he's trying to protect this Time Lord secret. This would be totally in character, since we know that he's tried to erase parts of his history before, like the fact that he was the War Doctor. It would make sense that he would try to cover up this early part of his life, but the Doctor isn't aware of the Timeless Child. So any greater awareness of his age or attempt to obfuscate his age stand out as being pointlessly enigmatic, just like with making a big deal of his name. These little mysteries worked when the Doctor had the answers and we didn't. If we had gotten the answers and then found out, like, all along with the Doctor that what we knew was wrong, that might have worked, because you got to a point where we knew a lot about the Doctor. We were very comfortable with the Doctor. Creating a new layer of mystery was not a bad idea. Saying that the Doctor's origins were not what we thought they were was not a bad idea. The problem is that there are elements of the Doctor's origin which we still never knew, and that the Doctor did know, that they didn't resolve, and that the Timeless Child makes messier. We aren't ever told the answers to the mysteries the Doctor teased us with for 60 years, and then they are all undermined when we learn that the Doctor doesn't even know the answers to these questions. Rewatching the show, I have to roll my eyes every time I see the Doctor alluding to the mystery of his true name, or obfuscating how old he is. It is clear that the Doctor is somebody important beyond their connection to the Time Lords, and the Timeless Child works as an answer to how and why they are so important. But the fact that the Doctor doesn't know about the Timeless Child means that it can only answer questions we didn't have, and not all the questions we did have. For example, this exchange between the Doctor and Davros has been made so much more confusing by the Timeless Child revelation.
In the end, you are merely another Time Lord.
Oh, Davros,
I am far more than just another Time Lord.
This line implies the Doctor knows that they are more significant than they've let on in the past. But if this is not a reference to being the Timeless Child, because the Doctor doesn't know about being the Timeless Child, then what is the Doctor talking about here? Is there another mystery that we never got an answer to in addition to the Timeless Child? And now that they are the Timeless Child, does this additional mystery matter? Well, luckily, we actually know what the Doctor was meant to be referring to in this scene, and it's not the only scene of its kind. Season 26 was littered with hints to a new origin story for the Doctor. This was all part of a story that we kind of refer to as the Carmel Master Plan, which would reveal that the Doctor was one of the Time Lord's founding fathers, an enigmatic being known as the Other, who threw himself into a birthing machine called a loom, which reincarnated him as an infant Time Lord who eventually grew up to be the Doctor that we know. Sylvester McCoy's Doctor mentioned working with Omega at the dawn of Time Lord Society, and this tracks with the Timeless Child story to a certain degree, since the Timeless Child was part of the founding of Gallifrey.
For Omega's remote stellar manipulator, a device used to customize stars with. And didn't we have trouble with the prototype?
We?
They.
The one big caveat being that, again, the Doctor knows this secret. He knows that he worked with Omega, and then apparently forgot about it somewhere along the way. And by this, I don't just mean that he forgot about it in the future. Like, by the time he reached the Timeless Child, he's forgotten about his past, sure, but he also forgot about it in the past. He's apparently remembered and then forgotten and then remembered again. What do I mean? He meets Omega as Troughton and as John Pertwee. He meets Omega, and neither one of them acknowledges knowing the other. How do we square that? How do we square these ideas that he met Omega as the Other? Reincarnated in a loom, forgot about him. Okay, cool, we can go with that. So by the time John Pertwee meets him, he doesn't know him. Got it. But then by the time he's Sylvester McCoy, he remembers knowing Omega at the dawn of time. But then he forgets it all over again, and now Jodie doesn't know about it. So how do we square this? Why does he sometimes know his origins and sometimes doesn't? He knows his name, but he doesn't know he's the Timeless Child. What is going on with this? And anyways, how secret could all these secrets really be? I mean, if the Time Lords knew them, casual Time Lords of the contemporary age who seemed to be in on it, the Master knew it. The Master didn't take much to figure it out. And he found it in the Matrix. The Matrix contains the secret, and the Doctor's had access to the Matrix multiple times. Heck, in the Nemesis, the Silver Nemesis, the Nemesis statue is able to tell the Lady Pinefort the secret. Yet apparently, living inside of the Doctor's time stream wasn't enough to reveal the information to Clara, despite her even already knowing the Doctor's name in the book. So what name does she see in the book? Does it matter? Does it have anything to do with the Timeless Child? Does it reveal to her the Morbius Doctors? No, but apparently the Silver Nemesis statue can do it.
I shall tell them of Gallifrey. Tell them of the old time. The time of chaos.
It just doesn't make any sense. What are the secrets that they're referring to? Are there multiple levels of secrets? Like, is there something between the Time War and the Timeless Child that is a big secret that the Doctor and everybody else is referring to that we just never got cued in on? What is that? Like, it's like we tried to do the Timeless Child back in the day with the Carmel Master Plan. It's like that was going to happen, but then the Wilderness Era happened. You know, and we never followed through on these plot points. So believe it or not, I don't blame Chibnall for all this messiness. You know, and I don't even think the Timeless Child is a bad idea, nor do I think the Carmel Master Plan is a bad idea. They both just had really unfortunate timing. If anything, we can blame the messiness of the Timeless Child on the very real unresolved plot threads of the classic era, which are mostly a result of the Carmel Master Plan. You know, most of those elements which don't align begin to crop up around that time of season 26, because this is the era where the Carmel Master Plan began to take effect. But because the show was put into an indefinite hiatus, these plot points were dropped. And since the 2005 revival had to focus on bringing the show back for new audiences, there wasn't time to revisit these ideas. So it's fair that to look back and say that these were things we should have dealt with. These are plot points we should resolve. But because the modern era never addressed it, it wasn't necessary for the modern era. It was necessary to bridge the classic era to the modern era if you wanted to do that. If your goal was to bridge modern and classic, then yes, you would need something like a Carmel master plan or a Timeless Child to bridge it all together. And unfortunately, season 26, it wasn't the right time to do it. And unfortunately, season 1 in 2005, it wasn't the right time to do it. And unfortunately, by the time we got around to it in Jodie Whittaker's era, it was way too late to do it. However, there was a natural point at which this should have been addressed, where we could have taken classic era, dropped plot points, brought them back into the modern era, reintegrated it, used it as a chance to bridge these two eras of the show together, and create a foundation upon which we could get into the future of the show with a good explanation of how the next run of Doctors will exist, since we needed to address the number of faces soon. So Stephen Moffat was overseeing the show in the year of the 50th anniversary, the same year the Doctor officially crosses the 13 faces threshold. Now, again, we technically would have passed that threshold a long time ago if we count either the Timeless Children or the Morbius Doctor. But nevertheless, the Time Lords have this 13 faces rule. We had seen these actors. The time had come for an explanation. If ever there was a time to look back at the history of the show, indulge in some classic lore, tie up some loose ends, and provide fan service in the form of addressing dropped plot points like the Morbius Doctors and the Cartmel Master Plan, this was the time. Instead of using this opportunity to address the past and pave the way for the future, though, Moffat took the easy path. Clara just asks the Time Lords for more lives, and they oblige, giving the Doctor an untold number of regenerations. This is neither interesting nor is it satisfying, and it does not even clearly define the limits of the new limitless paradigm that we have entered. It doesn't explain the inconsistencies of the past, like the Schalke Doctor or the Morbius Doctors, nor does it engage with the question of going beyond 13. In the classic era, the Master's pursuit of life beyond the allotted regenerations was at the core of his motivations and drove the conflict between him and the Doctor. We'd seen the Master take on many forms and exist in different states of being to resist his final death, and his outward appearance always reflected the evil and decay which dominated his existence and his thoughts. Now, it was time for the Doctor to make his own cross over that threshold, over that 13 faces line, and we had a great opportunity to explore those themes from the other side and maybe develop the character relationship with the cycle of life, death, and regeneration. I mean, Capaldi was going to have this whole Am I a Good Man arc. This is a good time to have it. It all makes sense. We could also see this new regeneration cycle having its impact on the dynamic between the Master and the Doctor and add some depth to their rivalry. If the Timeless Child arc had been introduced in that 3-episode run during the 50th anniversary, the Name of the Doctor, Day of the Doctor, Time of the Doctor, maybe it could have worked. Now, I know I said before that the numbers had been off since Doctor number 5, and there are inconsistencies throughout, but I think explicitly connecting the Hartnell Master Plan to the Timeless Child would have been better received if delivered in a time when it narratively mattered. So, if you will allow me for 1 sec, I am going to fanfic out on you for a bit, because I have a workaround to making this all make sense. It's too late, obviously, now, but in my head, like, there are versions of the Timeless Child that make sense. So to show that this is not a bad idea, I'm going to try to implant the Timeless Child into the 50th and see what we look like on the other side. So imagine in the Name of the Doctor, when Clara entered the time stream, she had found more Doctor than she was prepared for. The episode would play the same up to this moment. But what if when she got lost in this endless sea of Doctors and the Doctor had to go get her the way he does in the episode, what if in this version, he also was faced with more Doctors than he was prepared for? Dozens of faces that he doesn't know, including all the Morbius Doctors and the War Doctor and maybe even Ruth. Now, faced with versions of himself he never knew, he's forced to contend with the one part of his history he's never looked back on, the Time War. The 50th would be more or less the same episode as well, with one exception. We learn that the War Doctor is not the War Doctor, he's just the last of the War Doctors. He is the one who chose to end the Time War. Not the one who chose to fight in it, he's the one who chose to end it and seal all of his memories of the Time War away, along with all of his countless faces. And necessarily, he would also have to forget the secret that makes his many faces possible. He forgets his true origin, and that makes his sacrifice a little bit greater because he forgets about his limitless regeneration possibilities. Perhaps he sees it as a weapon that, the Time Lords exploited and that he didn't want taken control of again. So he chooses to lock the Time War away, end the Time War, end his limitlessness, and lock it all away. The Time of the Doctor could then tell a different version of the timeless child story that would explain why he both knows and doesn't know, remembers and doesn't remember the full extent of his history, of his origins, of his many faces. Maybe the reason the Third Doctor didn't know about Omega or his origins, but the Seventh Doctor did, is because it was something the Doctor learned during the Time War. Whoa, hold up, Jack. That doesn't make any sense. It was John Hurt who fought in the Time War, and Sylvester McCoy, well, he came before that. Yes, well, that is true. But for those of you unaware, the Time War is a very long, drawn-out conflict, and it exists in many spaces of time. So technically, it doesn't end before the 2005 series. It doesn't end until Day of the Doctor. And it actually starts well before. It starts in Genesis of the Daleks. The first act of the Time War is when the Time Lords sent an agent to kill the Daleks in their infancy. That agent being the Fourth Doctor. So the Time Lords actually had been time warring with the Daleks long before they had the capacity to fight back. So knowing that the Time Lords are actually the aggressors in the war might change your perspective on it. Now, as we said before, there were 8 Morbius Doctors plus 4 on-screen Doctors, which means that Tom Baker was on his last legs when he takes this mission. And he's actually the 12th Doctor, and as far as the first batch of regenerations. Hartnell could still be the first Doctor in the sense that the Morbius Doctors could have all lived on Gallifrey. I mean, just look at their facial hair. They look more like Gallifreyan nobles than they do look like any other version of the clean-shaven Doctor that we know. And none of them probably had a police box TARDIS. I doubt any of them had a TARDIS of their own, period. Most of them were probably called Theta. In fact, Hartnell would probably still have been the first to go by the moniker the Doctor. Regardless, Baker is number 12 in this set of lives and might already be looking for an escape, as the Doctor always is. Death is knocking, and he's aware. He has multiple conversations about the encroaching limits of Time Lord regeneration.
Well, if the Master would meekly accept the end of his regeneration cycle, it's not his style at all.
But that's something we must all accept, Doctor.
Thank you. Not the Master. Well, he had some sort of plan. That's why he came here, Engin.
After the 12th regeneration, there is no plan that will postpone death.
Now, during this 12th lifetime, the Doctor would go on to interface with the Matrix and become president of Gallifrey, which means he'd have ample time during this period of his life to learn about the timeless child history, a thing which is apparently super easy to do if you have access to the Matrix or if you are just generally a high-placed Time Lord. So he could do this. He could learn it at this time and then devise a hack to get around the artificially in place limits upon his regeneration abilities. Now, in practice, it doesn't go great for him the first time he tries to regenerate beyond his limit, because his first regeneration of this new cycle would be the one that follows Peter Davison, which means it's this guy, it's Other Baker, and he is quite violent, and the persona born out of this transformation is quite unstable. However, with some time and another regeneration, he gained greater understanding and mastery of himself, which is why Sylvester McCoy is the Doctor who speaks most assuredly about his origins, despite his past and future selves seeming unsure. With all of this knowledge, all of the knowledge of his origins and all of his knowledge of his role in creating the Time Lords, and with his knowledge of the Time War itself, being that he was the first agent on the ground, the Paul McGann Doctor would have a lot of things to be feeling guilty about, and he would ratchet up that guilt as the Time War got hotter. So he would see himself as culpable on many levels for the atrocities of the war, for the violence, and this would cause him to run as far and as fast as he could, until in desperation, much as he did in Night of the Doctor, he has to become the War Doctor. But instead of just choosing to drink a potion that makes him more warlike, he chooses to harness the power that lies within him, the secret power of the Timeless Child, and he creates the Division, a special unit tasked with ending the war. And then hundreds of doctors fight in the war, many simultaneously, and one of them is Ruth. Tecteun's part in the story can stay the same, including the part about her experimenting on the children and forcing the Doctor to become a kid again. The Doctor would basically have a long life as the Timeless Child, being experimented on, and then a whole life as a Time Lord in the old times, the times of chaos. Maybe a whole 13 lives before Tecteun then forces the Doctor into a new regeneration cycle. I think the easiest fix for me is to say that the Doctor is not the other, that the other is Tecteun. So instead of the other jumping into a loom and becoming the Doctor was cast into the loom by the other to be born once more as the Doctor in a time when they were more needed. So the Doctor is reborn in the age of the Time War and works with the other to end the war. But Division, of course, would prove to be yet another cold, bureaucratic apparatus of Time Lord dogma, and so Ruth becomes a fugitive. She is captured, killed, and force regenerated into the perfect Time Lord soldier, sent to die on the front lines of the Time War. But the twist is, the hurt Doctor won't die. He becomes the Doctor of War, and after an unnaturally long life of endless bloodshed, he decides that it's in his power to end the war in one single powerful moment, and his Timeless Child origin is once more lost to him. With this origin, we could then move into a future where it makes sense, everything that's going on in the Capaldi era. The Timeless Child arc would have begun, and he's entering a new ageless life. He is contemplating what it means to seek life beyond the limitations the Time Lords had placed on him, and whether or not he has been too critical on the Master all of this time, too harsh, now that he has casually been doing the thing that the Master wanted so badly. If the Master had learned the Timeless Child arc at some point in the Time War, it would make sense why this rivalry heated up so much, and why the Master is so bitter against the Doctor, even though they clearly care about each other, because they have this genetic gift that the Master wishes they have, while the Doctor finger wags the Master for wanting more life. It's an unfair setup if you look at it like that, and it would explain why their dynamic changes and why in this era the two of them try to become friends and see more eye to eye. It would explain why Capaldi is taking the time to wonder, am I still a good man? Am I still the Doctor? Who am I in this lifetime, now that I've had to come to terms with all of these other things? It's a lot more useful to the story to place the Timeless Child here. Currently in its placement, the Timeless Child is in the worst possible spot. Only a couple of years after a fresh batch of infinite regenerations that had no limit on it, while there were still plenty of mysteries up in the air that the Timeless Child couldn't solve for, and a year or two later they put a whole new can of worms in there by creating bi-generation. Now, I've seen some theories that use bi-generation to solve the problem of the Timeless Child, and I gotta tell you, I don't like any of those. It just makes it more confusing. And plus, you have to take another concept from the future and tack it onto the past, which is kind of what I'm doing with this whole video, but I don't want to pull too many pieces together to try to force this to work, because I'm not even trying to say that this should have happened here. I think that what Moffat did worked fine if we were going to just ignore the classic era. If we had no interest in tying the classic era more intimately to the modern era, we didn't have to address the Morbius doctors. We didn't have to address the Carmel master plan. What Stephen Moffat did to get over the 13 regenerations, it was fine. It could have been fine. It's not the problem. The reason I'm trying to rewrite this with the Timeless Child in mind is to show that the Timeless Child itself is not a bad idea. No part of it's a bad idea. I really don't think so. The idea that the Time Lords are not Time Lords without the Doctor, I'm fine with that. Because, I mean, the question Doctor Who should be universal. If you find the right planet, you shouldn't have the answers. It's like if you, new mysterious stranger blows into town and you're all head over heels in love with this tall, dark, handsome stranger, and then you find out that they're just from across the river, and you go over there, and then, okay, well, now you know their childhood best friend, the street they grew up on, and their mom, and that's all great, but the mystery is gone. We'd seen all of that in Doctor Who. We had seen Baby Doctor. We had seen Doctor's parents. We had seen the Doctor's home planet. We'd seen everything. We'd seen his name. If we take Theta to be his name, we'd seen his name written out. We'd seen it all. Like, there was no more Who in Doctor Who. So the idea of adding a new layer of mystery was not a bad idea. The idea of making their regenerations infinite was not necessarily a bad idea either. We want the show to go on forever. There should be consequences to it. There should be stakes to it. So we should have defined what it means to be the Timeless Child a little bit more clearly. But all in all, I see people talk about this episode, this arc, and I see people removing the DVDs out of my box set. And all I can think is, like, it can't be that bad. It can't be that bad. There's no one plot that is so horrible that it's worth all of this ire, especially not when it's got so much that it's doing right. Really, the only problem of the Chris Chibnall era and the writing of the Timeless Child is that Chris Chibnall was incapable of reading the room. Nobody cared. It's not that the things didn't have intriguing elements to them, but nobody cared about the Morbius doctors. We'd moved past it. You know, nobody cared about the Cartmel master plan. We'd moved past it. And could you have brought it up on your own terms? Yeah, you could have, but was that the time to do it? No, probably not. Probably not. I mean, even if he had waited another, little blip, imagine we had had a different arc over season 12, and then, season 13 Flux was, instead of Flux, it was the Timeless Child arc, and it was 5 episodes. What if we had 5 episodes to develop it, and it was the series that ends this era of Doctor Who, the Chibnall era, and this BBC era moving into the Disney BBC era, and it would kick off why this show will never end, because this is the infinite, Timeless Child, and there's a lot to contend with, so we need a lot of episodes to deal with it, rather than it being something where we jam it into this episode that has to deal with Cybermen and the end of Companions and, the death of Gallifrey, and it ends up being that the whole thing is just an exposition dump from the Master doing story time with the Doctor in the Matrix. That's really the problem, is that we did this really big thing without giving it time to breathe. Did this really big thing without giving the stage it needed to do what it needed to do. The 50th anniversary, perfect stage for it. The end of the Chibnall era Flux, that would have been the perfect stage for it. The beginning of the Disney era with the Bi-Generation, that would have been the perfect stage for it. But the middle of 13's run, it just didn't make any sense. And again, making the Doctor not know their own secret, it undermines so many of the stories. So without incorporating a reason why they forgot, when they forgot, and putting some hard rules on what the division is and what the doctor's, the Ruth Doctor's timeline is, it really just confused things more than it helped things. It's okay, sure, now we know that the show is infinite, but realistically, we knew the show was infinite. If they ever ran into a barrier, they were just going to push through it. We didn't need a way to get through it then. So it's a little confusing why they chose this time to write this big of a change to the story. It felt like maybe just they wanted the controversy. It really kind of feels like the controversy was the point, because the Chibnall era wasn't doing as hot as it could, and they needed eyes on. And who knows? Maybe that's not a very generous reading of what they were trying to accomplish. But as we've gone through this, we can see that the writing wasn't the problem. The idea wasn't the problem. It was this delivery. So I do have to question the delivery, what they were thinking, what the plan was, why here, why now, why like this. It doesn't really serve the ideas that Chibnall had come up with, the really brilliant ideas that Chibnall had come up with that really do serve the story and help to tie these two eras of the show together if engaged with fully. I just don't understand why this is how he chose to give us this story. Then again, what do I know? What do I know about timing? I'm the one who's making a video about the Timeless Child in 2025. I'm not exactly staying topical with my creative endeavors. And next week, we're going to be talking about Joy to the World, which was an episode that came out like 6 months ago. So, you know, who am I to judge Chibnall for his timing and what to release when? I clearly have no sense of it. But, you know, I also don't have millions of dollars and hundreds of thousands of fans riding on what I do. I have 35 subscribers. So I hope you all turned out for this one. Hope you all come back for the next one. I imagine that a lot of people won't agree what I have to say about this one, and that's fine. That's kind of the point of it. Like I said, controversy is the point. I love The Timeless Child. I think it's a great idea. I hate that it was wasted. I really do. There's a couple of stories like that, ideas that I think were really good, but that they came at the wrong time, the wrong place, the wrong series. You know, I liked Dinosaurs on a Spaceship in concept. I don't like Dinosaurs on a Spaceship as an episode. But, you know, there's... It's all hit and miss, you know, it's all hit and miss. And I'm not actually hating on anything, really. I love The Timeless Child. I think it's a good idea. I don't think it's worth stealing people's DVDs off the shelf.
If you're doing it, stop it. Get some help.
But anyway, that's going to be it for me. I'm going to sign off here. I'll be back next week, like I said, with that Joy to the World video. And until then, if you have anything interesting that you've got going on, let me know about it in the comments. I'll check your channel out.